I have a speech here by Bernie Sanders, and it says on the video that it was April 28th, 1999 is when he said it, but the U.S.-led NATO operation began on March 24th. So that would have been a whole month afterwards. The speech that he gives has a sense of urgency, and he says, I hope that we have another discussion, but the text of the resolution, March 23rd, so you have the resolution here, which was March 23rd, 1999, co-sponsored by Mr. Biden for himself, Mr. Warner, Mr. Levin, Mr. Byrd, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Hagel, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Lieberman, and Mr. Robb. Supported conduct military air operations and missile strikes against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia on govtrack.us, 106th Congress, first session. The title of this act is Authorizing the President of the United States to conduct military air operations and missile strikes against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, in brackets, Serbia and Montenegro, in the Senate of the United States, March 23rd. Co-sponsored by all the people that I said, a concurrent resolution authorizing the President of the United States to conduct military air operations and missile strikes against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. So those are the exactly the same wordage. I don't know why. I guess they did it twice, right? Resolved by the Senate, the House of Representatives concurring. So the House and the Representatives had the exact same one-sentence resolution. And we as a nation invaded Kosovo. One report here that says NATO's actions directly violated the UN Charter, Articles 53 and 103, its own charter, the 1975 Helsinki Final Act, and the 1980 Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. And the war was a crime against peace, pure and simple. That's one report. Now, March 24th, 1999, the U.S.-led NATO operation began. It was launched under the responsibility to protect doctrine asserted by Clinton, Bill Clinton, and Tony Blair. For 78 days, NATO targeted what was then the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. So we attacked Yugoslavia. I thought it disintegrated. Did we help it disintegrate? Which later split into Serbia and Montenegro over alleged atrocities against ethnic Albanians in the southern province of Kosovo. Yugoslavia was accused of ethnic cleansing and genocide as bombs rained down on Britain. So ethnic Albanians, they absolutely love the Clintons. There's a Bill Clinton Avenue in some city in Kosovo, and then they got a big statue of Clinton. So there was one group, right? So Bill Clinton said, we're going to protect these ethnic Albanians. And it's kind of a good thing for the Muslim world because he protected Muslims. He protected Muslims. Now, there is some debate about whether or not there was a genocide. Thousands is a lot of people. So it's hard to say that that's not a genocide. You want to say, is it more of a massacre? The Boston Massacre is what? 8 people got shot? If thousands is just a massacre, then the Boston Massacre is just a fun little shootout. But if it's genocide, it's thousands and it was scattered. So there were scattered shootings. So it wasn't a systemic, against a... Albania is a country, and it's down there in the Balkans too. So it's a country, I guess, next to Kosovo. Now, Kosovo is a part of Serbia, and it always was a part of Serbia. Even in that resolution, it said Yugoslavia and Serbia and Montenegro, right? So it didn't even mention Kosovo. How did this turn into the Kosovo War? So it's Serbia and Montenegro. During World War I, the empire, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, tried to conquer the Balkans, this rocky, very tribalistic area of Europe. And they, the Duke goes in and he's like, hey, I rule over all you guys. And then somebody shot the Archduke. So it was like the vice president, the next in succession after the king dies. And the king wouldn't die for quite some time. But it was a Serbian. It was a Serbian who started World War I. That there's a total population of almost 3 million people in Albania. So, Albania, it's a country, but it has nothing to do with the Albanians is the ethnic minority. So there was ethnic minorities. The Albanians were in Kosovo. So there was Albanians who were originally from Albania, but they were in Kosovo. So they were in Serbia. So for some reason, the Albanians were not in their own country. And I also heard that it was the Muslims, and I also heard that there was fundamentalist Catholics involved. Now, you know, Albanians are an ethnic group. So they're not even a country, but they're tied to the country. They're an ethnic group. So they're the people native to Albania, Kosovo, and neighboring countries. The term is also used to refer to the citizens of the Republic of Albania, which that makes more sense. Ethnic Albanians speak the Albanian. More than half of ethnic Albanians live in Albania and Kosovo. A large Albanian population lives in the Republic of Macedonia and Italy, with smaller Albanian populations located in Serbia and Montenegro. The majority of Albanians are nominally Muslims, mainly Sunni, with a smaller Shiite, Sufi, and Bektashi component. And a minority are nominally Christians. Nominally? What does that mean? They're nominally something. Well, I'm just nominally. It seems like it's small, but if they're, you know, the minority are nominally, normally, is that what he's trying to say? In name only. Okay, so officially, though perhaps not in reality. So officially, the majority of Albanians are Muslim, though it might not be the reality. Okay. Albanians produce many prominent figures such as Skanderbeg, leader of the medieval Albanian resistance. About the Albanians, they're the winner, right? Bill Clinton said, I'm going to save those Albanians. For why? For what reason? I don't know, okay? I think there's also the CIA. The CIA has a role in all this. So Albanian, it's talking about the total population is 7 to 8 million. 7 to 8 million is the total world population. But guess where most of them live? In this Wikipedia page, it didn't mention anything about Turkey. I didn't hear anything about Turkey. There's either 500,000 up to 5 million. That's a big range. How do we not know how many Albanians are in Turkey? In Albania, there's 2.3 million. In Kosovo, there's 1.6 million. That's how many Albanians are in these countries. In Macedonia, 509,000. In Greece, 280,000 to 600,000. And then Montenegro, 30,000. Croatia, 17,000. Romania. You know, they're bombing, you know, bridges and trains and hospitals, homes, probably schools, a power grid. Even refugee convoys, a TV station. Oh, that's a war crime, right? Or is it a propaganda? Is it state TV? State TV could be propaganda, right? I don't know. Hospitals and schools and homes, right? Those are civilian targets. Oh, man, it is hard to tell who civilians are in a war. You need to have like a bright, you know, green outfit that is just obvious. Like, I am a civilian. I am not a military person. Please don't bomb me. Okay, so Bernie Sanders supported this war, and I have a clip here. In the very beginning of his speech, which I believe, you know, the dates, I'm not sure about the dates, but I think this is right before Kosovo gets voted on, right before the invasion. He said that it was unconstitutional. Bernie Sanders had said that this war, the way that it was brought about, is unconstitutional. The authorization for force, Bill Clinton said he was going to go ahead and invade no matter what, so it didn't matter what the fuck the House had to say. So really he was kind of like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Is you guys on board? Is this cool? What's up? Do I got to buck you? Do I got to, you know, and I heard that the United Nations didn't even accept it, right? So they're just bombing it, you know, willy-nilly. They just went ahead and went with it, right? Well, the president is going with it, so, you know, Bernie Sanders went ahead and jumped into it. He mentioned that it wasn't constitutional, that it was rushed, and he hoped that there would be another debate. He also pointed out, though, however, the Panama invasion, the Grenada invasion, and the Vietnam invasion were all illegal, unconstitutional wars, too. So, therefore, because the Republicans did it, it was okay if the Democrats did it, too.
This should not be the last debate on this issue. Mr. Speaker, my assessment of the situation at the present moment is that Mr. Milosevic is a war criminal and that ethnic cleansing, mass murder, rape, and the forced evacuation of hundreds of thousands of innocent people from their homes is unacceptable and cannot be ignored. Sadly, because Mr. Milosevic has negotiated agreements which he has then ignored, I have supported the NATO bombings of military targets. I believe that the Serb military and police must be withdrawn from Kosovo, that the hundreds of thousands of people uprooted from their homes must be allowed to return, that Kosovo must be given some kind of self-rule, and that an international peacekeeping force should be established to maintain order.
Calm down. I don't understand his rhetoric here. He's all pissed off and he's mad and he's like, you know what? This thing's unconstitutional and it's illegal and I vote yes for it. I figured out the dates too. So the April 29th date is correct. Remember, there is concurrent resolutions. So the Senate votes for it on March 23rd. NATO starts dropping bombs on March 24th. So when the Senate does something, we just assume the House is going to, fall in line. I don't understand who was in charge of the House at the time in 1999. And that's why Bernie Sanders said he wished there was another debate. So it actually happened a month later. So you had March 23rd. They've been bombing them for about a month. And then in, April 29th, Bernie Sanders votes for it anyways. It's illegal. Essentially, Bernie Sanders is like, it's unconstitutional, just like Vietnam, just like Panama, just like Grenada. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. It's immoral. We've been bombing them for over a month. And I vote yes. Go ahead, bomb the shit out of them. It's no problem. I have no issues. I got no qualms whatsoever. Well, I don't know. If they're already bombing, I mean, what would you have? I don't know. So he went ahead and voted for it. Let's have a listen to what Ron Paul was saying in the House about this war.
Madam Speaker, the bombing in Serbia must stop immediately. Serbia has never aggressed against the United States. Serbia is involved in a bloody civil war of which we should have no part and have not declared war as the Constitution requires. And that makes this war both immoral and illegal. Not only has the bombing done no good, it has made the situation much worse and the world more dangerous. Serb troops are not dying, American troops are not dying, but innocent civilians are being killed by the hundreds on both sides. There are just too many uncanny accidents. The refugee problem, which was minimal before the bombing, is now catastrophic as a result. Congress should not fund this war, and if we do, we have become an accomplice and morally responsible for the killing and for the spread of this conflict that will surely occur if this bombing is not stopped.
You have the House resolution, which was voted on April 29th, 1999 by Bernie Sanders. These bombing only actually went on for 79 days or so. So it was only 2 or 3 month war anyways. It started a month after Bernie Sanders went ahead and jumped onto the bandwagon. So maybe he thought that there was nothing that he could have done about it. But what would have been, what would he have lost if he had been just vote no? You know what I mean? Sometimes by being the independent, you could vote something down, be in the minority, knowing that your vote's not going to change anything, but you get to stick to your principles. He didn't do that. He compromised. He sold out. He got something for this deal, probably that F-35 plant in Vermont. So when it comes to Kosovo, this is a clusterfuck. This war is such a clusterfuck. Is it Serbia, Kosovo, my aide, an advisor on his team who quit and then wrote this long-ass letter on the antimedia.org. It's posted on it. But he wrote this long-ass letter just, basically documenting all the war crimes. He says here, with the way that the House resolution and the concurrent Senate one was written up, it not only allows the current air war, which is going on, right? They've been bombing for a month, but it's unlimited escalation. It thereby authorizes the commission of war crimes, even of genocide. Indeed, the very day after the vote, the Pentagon announced that it would begin area bombing, which the Washington Post 430/99 characterized as dropping unguided weapons from B-52 bombers in an imprecise technique that resulted in large-scale civilian casualties in World War II and the Vietnam War. Oh, that's good, right? Let's just go ahead and repeat what the fuck we did in Vietnam. April 29th, 1999, Bernie Sanders went ahead and voted to go to war in Kosovo, in Yugoslavia, in the Balkans, defending the Albanian Muslims who weren't living in Albania. They were living in southern Kosovo, in Serbia, and the Serbians were attacking them, but they were attacking them because they were being attacked by the Kosovo Liberation Army. Now, it's a civil war. I think that's a good characterization of this thing. It's a civil war. So Kosovo Liberation Army was being provocative against the Serbians by murdering them, by killing them here and there. So it wasn't like, but they went after the pockets of the people, and they were killing I guess maybe a dozen at a time or some shit, the Serbians. So the Serbians were cracking down hard upon the Kosovo Liberation Army's attacks. Who is the Kosovo Liberation Army? Well, it's an they're a paramilitary organization. They sought the separation of Kosovo from the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia and Serbia during the 1990s. And they want to create an eventual greater Albania. So therefore, expansion, right? This is imperialism. They're doing what Hitler, he said he needed space, so he just started taking over land area that was adjacent to him. They wanted that land in Kosovo. They wanted the separation of it. Now, if you take a look at Greater Albania is an irredentist concept of lands that was considered to form the national homeland by many Albanians based on claims on the present day or historical presence of Albanian populations in those areas. In addition to the existing Republic of Albania, the term incorporates claims to regions in the neighboring states. The areas include Kosovo, in the Kosovo Valley of Serbia, territories in southern Montenegro, northwestern Greece, the Greek region of Western Republic of Macedonia. So if the Albanians get their way, they're going to take a chunk of Greece, they're going to take a chunk of Macedonia, they're going to take another chunk of Serbia, the Kosovo Valley, they're going to take territories in southern Montenegro. So the Albanians, are they content with just Kosovo? Are we okay with just Kosovo? And how's Kosovo doing? Actually, their unemployment is through the roof, 31%, and young adults at 60%. The number one country to supply fighters for ISIS is coming out of Kosovo. Now, it's only like 314 fighters or so, but still, the number one producer of ISIS fighters in Europe, Kosovo. All this unemployment, Kosovo. Did the United States help Kosovo? In fact, Kosovo didn't become independent until 2008. They weren't even a country then. They didn't even become a country till 10 years later. Kosovo Liberation Army, it had a campaign against the Yugoslav military and the Serb paramilitaries within Kosovo, known as the Kosovo War of 1998-1999. That's the whole fucking conflict right there. That's the Civil War. So Yugoslavia used to be this big thing, but now we're just focused on a little part of Yugoslavia. There's still parts of Serbia. Serbs were, I think Yugoslavia and Serbs are kind of, synonymous. Yugoslavia was the bigger territory run by Tito. Tito dies, and then all these territories, Slovenia, runs away, and they're like, hey, get the hell out of here, refugees. And Yugoslav military and the Serb paramilitaries within Kosovo. So you have its campaign against the police government, Yugoslav security forces, and then they got a major crackdown. So who started Wikipedia? The Kosovo War was an armed conflict in Kosovo that lasted from March 5th, 1998 until June 11th, 1999. It was fought by the forces of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, by this time consisting of the republics of Montenegro and Serbia, which controlled Kosovo before the war. And the Kosovo Albanian rebel group known as the Kosovo Liberation Army, KLA, with air support from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, from March 24th, 1999, and ground support from the Albanian Army. The KLA, the Kosovo Liberation Army, formed in 1991, initiated its first campaign in 1995 when it launched attacks targeting Serbian law enforcement in Kosovo. And in June 1996, the group claimed responsibility for acts of sabotage targeting Kosovo police stations. In 1997, the organization acquired a large amount. 1998, you have the KLA, the Kosovo Liberation Army, or the Kosovo Liberation Army, attacks targeting Yugoslav authorities in Kosovo that resulted in an increased presence of Serb paramilitaries and regular forces who subsequently began pursuing a campaign of retribution targeting KLA sympathizers and political opponents in a drive which killed 1,500 to 2,000 civilians and KLA combatants. Now, I'm liking KLA because they're saying they're going around sabotaging. I thought they was going around shooting people. Sabotage is what Nelson Mandela did. He felt that terrorism turns people against you. He felt that revolution is a full-on war. So he was only limited to sabotage, blowing up private property, destroying private property to make a point, to make a political point where there's no death. They went around killing these Kosovo Liberation Army people and sympathizers. So that was the genocide, the killing of 1,500 to 2,000 civilians. Noam Chomsky had said that if you want to call that a genocide, well, you're mocking the entire Holocaust. So he very much opposed to the word genocide being put upon this. I've heard that repeated. Everybody actually said when it came to Kosovo, it was ethnic cleansing. It was genocide. This shit is repeated over and over again. Well, this is 1,500 to 2,000 civilians and KLA combatants. So 2,000 civilians and combatants. Now, if it's just sabotage, okay, but if they're killing first, well, eye for an eye, right? So who's right, who's wrong? 1,500 to 2,000, if you're going to consider that a genocide, how is starving 500,000 to 1 million Iraqi people and then coming back and murdering with an invasion another million, how's that not a genocide? Diplomatic solution failed, NATO intervened, right? This is America. America pushes NATO to intervene, justifying the campaign in Kosovo as a humanitarian war. This precipitated a mass expulsion of Kosovar Albanians as the Yugoslav forces continued to fight during the aerial bombardment of Yugoslavia, March to June of 1999. This is when you're going to have all the atrocities. The worst atrocities are going to begin after the United States starts dropping bombs. After Bernie, there was already atrocities happening, and Bernie went ahead and voted to continue it. After a month, right? Oh, there's been aerial bombings. We need more aerial bombings. That's the only way we're going to stop this Milosevic from this horrible genocide, which ultimately kills 2,000 civilians. So 2,000 is, that's a massacre. That's a massacre. Is it systemic genocide against a specific group of people? Milosevic, Slobodan Milosevic, was the one who was doing the genociding. He's the Hitler, and there's going to be another Holocaust, and it's Slobodan Milosevic. Now, Slobodan Milosevic is going to die in The Hague. So he's like to St. Louverture, right? He was sitting in The Hague waiting to be put on trial by war crimes, but he said the tribunal was illegal because it wasn't sanctioned by NATO or the UN. It was like just some independent group that was able to get a hold of him. He's sitting in The Hague, and then he dies in prison. But they have a trial later on, and they actually said even though he was negligent, he didn't commit genocide. So the subsequent trial, which was tried in absentia since he was dead, actually, basically defended him. It not nullifies, but it says he wasn't a genocider. He wasn't a genocider. That's what the United Nations in 2001, they administered the Supreme Court based in Kosovo, and they found that there was a systemic campaign of terror, including murders, rapes, arsons, and severe maltreatments, but that Yugoslav troops had tried to remove the Albanian population, then eradicate it. They were trying to displace them, not genocide them. They were pulling Andrew Jackson's Trail of Tears bullshit, but they weren't doing George Washington's exterminate all the Iroquois in northern New York or attack the Miami and Shawnee and Ohio so you could take their land kind of bullshit. So that's not genocide, right? It's not genocide. It's removal. It's bad. It's horrible. And it's systemic campaign of terror and murders, rapes, arsons. So I don't know. I think this is actually a good case about is it genocide or isn't it genocide? 2,000 people is a lot of fucking people. It's a lot of people. In 1999, with the fighting over an international force in place within Kosovo, the KLA was officially disbanded and their members entered the Kosovo Protection Corps, a civilian emergency protection body that replaced the KLA and Kosovo Police Force as foreseen in the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1244. Former Kosovo Liberation Army leaders also entered politics, some of them winning high-ranking offices. There have been many reports of abuses and war crimes committed by the KLA during and after the conflict, such as massacres of civilians, prison camps, and destruction of medieval churches and monuments. In April 2014, the Assembly of Kosovo considered and approved the establishment of a special court to try cases involving crimes and other serious abuses committed in 1999 to 2000 by members of the KLA. Massacres of civilians, prison camps, destruction of medieval churches and monuments. Time in 1974 when Bernie Sanders said that we needed to eradicate the CIA, we needed to get rid of it, that it was only propping up right-wing dictatorships all across the world, that there was no reason to have it. Now we have here James Bissett, Canadian ambassador to Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, and Albania, wrote in 2001 that media reports indicate that as early as 1998, the Central Intelligence Agency, assisted by the British Special Air Service, were arming and training Kosovo Liberation Army members in Albania to foment armed rebellion in Kosovo. The hope was that with Kosovo in flames, NATO could intervene. Holy shit, that's exactly what the fuck happened. The plot thickens, okay? So the CIA, did the CIA prop the KLA up, or were they just giving them some money? The Kosovo War was also, the notable distinction about it was this was the first time that the Germans suited up in their military garb and went out killing again. It was a while before since the last time Germans had got to kill, and they got to kill again here in Kosovo. So February 1996, the KLA undertook a series of attacks against police stations and Yugoslav government officers, saying that they had killed Albanian civilians as part of an ethnic cleansing campaign. Later that year, the British weekly, The European, carried an article by a French expert stating that German civilian and military intelligence services have been involved in training and equipping the rebels with the aim of cementing German influence in the Balkan area. The birth of the KLA in 1996 coincided with the appointment of Hans-Georg Geiger as the new head of the BND, which is the German Secret Service. The BND men were in charge of. You have Serbian authorities who denounced the KLA as a terrorist organization. So that's interesting. The United States allied with the terrorists. The KLA, according to the authorities, the Serbian authorities, says the KLA was a terrorist organization. Looks like it could have been started by the Germans. I also heard 1993 is when they began. KLA began in 1993, but I don't see anything about its creation. Who created it? Why was it created? Here it says that KLA was created in 1996 by the German secret police, by the BND. And so the BND, huh? The Germans and the Americans, once again, united. So for empire, right, for imperialistic empire, for global hegemony, for a neoliberal disaster, let's go in there and save Kosovo. In 2000, an estimated 80% of Europe's heroin supply was controlled by Kosovar Albanians. Now, it wasn't just the Serbian authorities that said that the KLA was a terrorist organization. In fact, the U.S. State Department had listed the KLA as a terrorist organization. So we said, you damn terrorists, and then we give them, a whole bunch of money and weapons to stir up dissent so that way we could justify a NATO invasion. I wonder if that's what we did in Syria. And, all the Arab Spring. I wonder if all the Arab Spring was just a bunch of CIA-funded, unrest to attempt to topple the government, to make it look like it's a popular revolution, to foment the rebellion, and then once there's fighting going on, then we go in, settle all the differences, and then put our revolutionaries into power. It's actually kind of about 50% of all the money that KLA had got, it was from heroin. It was from narcotics. In fact, 1999 Western intelligence agencies estimated that over $250 million of narcotics money had found its way into the KLA coffers. After the NATO bombing, KLA-linked heroin traffickers again began using Kosovo as a major supply route. So, thank goodness for Bernie Sanders blowing the shit out of Kosovo, so that way the KLA could get the heroin into Serbia and the Balkans and just, everybody. Let's get all of Europe hooked on this good Kosovo shit. on this good Kosovo Liberation Army fucking heroin. That's what Bernie Sanders was in favor of. That's what Bernie Sanders had voted for. That's what Bernie Sanders voted for after a month that it had begun. And there's Tim Judah, a KLA representative. He said that they had already met with American, British, and Swiss intelligence agencies in 1996. Again, we're here in the same year, 1996. Germans were meeting up with them in 96, American, British, Swiss intelligence agencies. So you basically have a group of fighters who knows that they're being financed by these Western powers. And so, yeah, give us all the money. Show us the money. That's what KLA was all about. You want to give the terrorists some money? Which is weird. So the CIA is giving money to the KLA in 96, and yet in 98 we had thought, in 97, we were saying that they were terrorists. They were designated as a terrorist organization until, Clinton decided to go ahead and start bombing away in the Balkans. So they admitted that they helped to train the Kosovo Liberation Army before NATO's bombing of Yugoslavia, but they also did. So does that look fixed to you? Does that look fixed to you? This is me trying to bunch up a hand. This is me trying to extend it all the way. Right? And it's supposed to go all the way out. It's not normal. It's not fixed. So 1991 to 2007, that's when he was a House of Representatives, Bernie Sanders. 91 to 2007. 91, all the 90s essentially until 2007, until Bush steps down. Now, he's a representative, and then 2007 till today, he's a senator. So he was in there since Papa Bush. He's been in there for quite some time. So he understood who Clinton was. He understood what he was all about. He had already intervened in Somalia and Iraq several times. So the anti-war activists had occupied Sanders' office in 1999, and because of Kosovo, and arrested. Bernie Sanders had the anti-war activists who were in his office arrested. Hey, get the hell out of my office. I am fuck that. Bomber Bernie, old Bomber Bernie. He voted for the Kosovo War in 1999, in April 29th of 1999, after a month that had already been bombed. The war in Sarajevo, the war in the Balkans, the war in Serbia, right, Montenegro, Yugoslavia, the US-NATO-SLA-CIA Serbian War, the Yugoslavian War, the neoliberal global hegemony war, which is so fucking complicated. We can't even agree on the name of the godforsaken thing. Again, what? The war in Sarajevo, the Kosovo War, the war in the Balkans, the NATO-led Serbian invasion, the American-Serbian War, the defense of Albania. What the fuck are we calling it?
Mr. Speaker, I believe that we must strive as hard as we possibly can to find an alternative between doing nothing and allowing ethnic cleansing and mass murder to continue, and the continuation of a war which will certainly result in terrible destruction, large numbers of casualties, and the expenditure of great sums of money. I believe that the United States must be as active as we possibly can in finding a road to peace. I believe that Germany and the United Nations have brought forth proposals which might be able to form the basis of a negotiated peace. I believe that Russia, a long-term ally of Serbia, should be asked to play a more active role in the process and to supply troops for an international peacekeeping force.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul. You're next.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, last week the House narrowly passed a watered-down House concurrent resolution originally designed to endorse President Clinton's plan to send U.S. troops to Kosovo. A House concurrent resolution, whether strong or weak, has no effect of law. It is merely a sense of Congress statement. If last week's meager debate and vote are construed as merely an endorsement without dissent of Clinton's policy in Yugoslavia, the procedure will prove a net negative. It will not be seen as a congressional challenge to unconstitutional presidential war power. If, however, the debate is interpreted as a serious effort to start the process to restore congressional prerogatives, it may yet be seen as a small step in the right direction. We cannot know with certainty which it will be. That will depend on what Congress does in the future. Presently, those of us who argued for congressional responsibility with regards to declaring war and deploying troops cannot be satisfied that the trend of the last 50 years has been reversed. Since World War II, the war power has fallen into the hands of our presidents, with Congress doing little to insist on its own constitutional responsibility. From Korea and Vietnam to Bosnia and Kosovo, we have permitted our presidents to wag the Congress, generating a perception that the United States can and should police the world. Instead of authority to move troops and fight wars coming from the people through a vote of their congressional representatives, we now permit our presidents to cite NATO declarations and UN resolutions. This is even more exasperating, knowing that upon joining both NATO and the United Nations, it was made explicitly clear that no loss of sovereignty would occur, and all legislative bodies of member states would retain their legal authority to give or deny support for any proposed military action. Today, it's erroneously taken for granted that the president has authority to move troops and fight wars without congressional approval. It would be nice to believe that this vote on Kosovo was a serious step in the direction of Congress once again reasserting its responsibility for committing U.S. troops abroad. But the president has already notified Congress that regardless of our sense of Congress resolution, he intends to do what he thinks is right, not what is legal and constitutional, only what he decides for himself. Even with this watered-down endorsement of troop deployment with various conditions listed, the day after the headlines blared, the Congress approves troop deployments to Kosovo. If Congress is serious about this issue, it must do more. First, Congress cannot, in this instance, exert its responsibility through a House concurrent resolution. The president can and will ignore this token effort. If Congress decides that we should not become engaged in the civil war in Serbia, we must deny the funds for that purpose. That we can do. Our presidents have assumed the war power, but as of yet, Congress still controls the purse. Any effort on our part to enter a civil war in a country 5,000 miles away for the purpose of guaranteeing autonomy and or a separate state against the avowed objections of the leaders of that country involved, that is Yugoslavia, can and will lead to a long-term serious problem for us. Our policy, whether it's with Iraq or Serbia, Congress has not given the president authority to wage war. The House resolution regarding Kosovo was narrowly, reluctantly, and conditionally passed. It was a non-binding resolution and had no effect of law. Even if it did, the resolution dealt with sending troops as a peacekeeping force to Kosovo only if a peace agreement was signed. There was no mention of endorsing an act of war against Serbia. Besides, the resolution was not the proper procedure for granting war power to a president. The Senate resolution, now claimed to be congressional consent for the president to wage war, is not much better. It too was a sense of Congress resolution without the force of law. It implies the president can defer to NATO for authority to pursue a war effort. Only Congress can decide the issue of war. Congress cannot transfer the constitutional war power to the president or to NATO or to the United Nations. The Senate resolution, however, specifically limits the use of force to air operations and missile strikes. But no war has ever been won with air power alone. The Milosevic problem will actually get worse with our attacks, and ground troops will likely follow. It has been argued we are needed to stop the spread of war throughout the Balkans. Our presence will do the opposite, but it will certainly help the military-industrial complex. Peaceful and cooperative relations with Russia, a desired goal, has now ended, and we have provoked the Russians into now becoming a much more active ally of Serbia. U.S. and NATO policy against Serbia will certainly encourage the Kurds. Every argument for Kosovo's independence can be used by the Kurds for their long sought after independence. This surely will drive the Turks away from NATO. Our determination to be involved in the dangerous civil war may well prompt a stronger Greek alliance with their friends in Serbia, further splitting NATO and offending the Turks, who are naturally inclined to be sympathetic to the Albanian Muslims. No good can come of our involvement in this Serbian civil war, no matter how glowing and humanitarian the terms used by our leaders. Sympathy and compassion for the suffering and voluntary support for the oppressed is commendable. The use of force and acts of war to pick and choose between two sides fighting for hundreds of years cannot achieve peace. It can only spread the misery and suffering, weaken our defenses, and undermine our national sovereignty. Only when those who champion our war effort in Serbia are willing to volunteer for the front lines and offer their own lives for the cause will they gain credibility. Promoters of war never personalize it. It's always some other person or some other parent's child's life whose will be sacrificed, not their own. With new talk of reinstituting the military draft, since many disillusioned military personnel are disgusted with the morale of our armed forces, all Americans should pay close attention as our leaders foolishly and carelessly rush our troops into a no-win war of which we should have no part. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired.